My dear friends, now I would like to show you the game against, which I played against Grandmaster Golod from Israel. And although this game was played with rapid time control, it is some 25 minutes per game or 20 minutes per game, I don't remember exactly in mind. Still, I was pretty happy with the quality of my play, and also a pretty interesting, pretty good endgame arose on the board after a while, and this is this being subject of our study at the moment. I think the game will prove very instructive to you. So, and I will show it from the very opening, because in this particular game, as in many games, the end game is closely connected to the opening. So after d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, queen c2. Okay, these are some theoretical lines, and exact study of this theory is a bit beyond our task at the moment. d6. So after all these moves, we already have an endgame. And in this endgame, many games have been played, and I will try to show you the example of this game, what possible strategies there are, and basically before we start analyzing, it should be noted that after bishop takes c7, knight d5 is unpleasant, hitting both the pawn on e3 and the bishop on c7. And after bishop d6, knight takes e3, bishop takes f8, knight c2 check, knight will escape via b3, and white will have some serious damage done to his position, because the pawn will be weak and he'll be lagging in development. So one way or the other, taking the pawn is not possible, so bishop h4 is the main move, and knight d5. So now we have a more or less endgame, but in fact it is, as I said, closely linked to an opening. There are still many pieces. Many games have been played starting from this position, and let us try to understand the intricacies of this particular ending. Here white has two bishops. This is in fact of major importance. And these two bishops at the moment are not particularly active, but bishops, they always have the future. The position might open up, and they will develop certain strength. So other aspects of the position are that white has pawns in the center, and after e4 the center might even become very strong, limiting the black's bishop and the movement of other pieces. What black has in return is not quite as clear, but in fact he also boasts of some strategic advantages. First of all, it is a better development. At the moment he has three pieces developed and white only one, and in fact black has already castled and connected his rooks, which is also of some advantage. So he might have a temporary initiative of some kind, and you will also see that he has the way to work against the white center with f5, which is also a mighty weapon in many games played by this line. So normally it is for white to play bishop f2. After e4, knight e3, knight generates many threats, at least depriving white of any advantage. So after bishop f2, now black has two moves at his disposal, both of them different in value basically, because one is playing c5, allows e4, building up this pawn structure, limiting the bishop, and another move would be to play f5 here, thus not allowing e4 at once, but basically maybe weakening the pawns a bit and allowing white to obtain a reasonable position after bishop b5, knight e2 castles, maybe with some advantage. So f5 is not very popular at the moment. In fact, this move has also been played against me once and not very successfully. So maybe c5 is a better move. And here in this position, it is, as I said, normal to play e4. And many games have been played, and there are two moves here, knight f4 and knight e7. And the move knight e7 is maybe even more important here because it shows what black aims at. The thing is that here white has this pawns e4, f3, and for an endgame it is very important that the black's pieces are limited in such a way. For instance, had the knight been on f6, all black's pieces would have been limited by 2 pawns alone, squares d5 and f5 having been taken. So what black has in return is the motive of playing f5. For instance, after knight e2, f5, now black is attacking the pawn, and it seems that whatever white does, black is alright after undermining the center in such a way, because e5 of course weakens the diagonal, opens some nice squares for black pieces, and after e takes f5, knight f5, it seems that black's advantage in development becomes so serious that it compensates the weakness on e6 and the white's two bishops. As you see, white's king is still in the center, and I don't think there is advantage for white here in this position. So you see, this is basically the main motive for black in this sort of endgame, trying to work against the white center. It should also be noted that such major strategic aspects, such as pawn center, are also important in the endgame, and sometimes even become more important in the endgame. The other attempts to play this position without f5, just by developing rook c8, rook d8, knight c6 and so on, in fact proved unsuccessful in practice, mainly because they ignore the rule that the side which has temporary advantages, and the development advantage is a temporary advantage, should act pretty fast in order to use this temporary advantage. In the long run, the bishops come out, and the pawn center becomes strong, and black will have very few counter chances to show. So, but all this, as I said, is maybe irrelevant because f5 is strong, and my opponent in this game decided to play something else. He played knight e2 at once. In fact, waiting with the move e4 a bit, and thus not wanting to allow this counterplay with f5. And now when we look at this position, we will notice that for a while at least, white's pieces are placed in such a way that they don't have many moves. The bishop on f2 is passive at the moment. The bishop on f1 is limited by his own knight, and by the pawn on g2. The bishop on f2 is limited by the pawn on e3. So in fact, if there would be a way to keep these pieces from moving, and black would probably have a nice advantage because of his greater mobility. So he makes a normal move for this line, f5, even though his white's pawn is not yet on e4, so black is not undermining the center or anything, but in fact he's preventing the white's expansion in center, because now e4 takes knight f6 would in fact bring about only trouble for white, because e4 would be hanging, and after knight g4, knight e4, the bishop on f2 as well, and black is likely to win some material very soon. So after f5, white castled, and now he still has his two bishops, and it is of utmost importance to keep them passive. And at the moment, it doesn't seem that any activity is in sight for white, because after e4, the bishop on f2 will always be hanging. After f takes e4, f takes e4, rook f2. So you see, two bishops are there, but they remain passive, and black, with his move f5, started also to gain some space in the center. And surprisingly enough, after only very few moves, white will begin to suffer. So you see in this kind of endgame, fighting for space is so important that it can change the evaluation of position altogether, from like slightly better for white to maybe big advantage for black. So you see how this will happen. So I played rook a8, and now after king b1, which would be like a natural move, getting out of the c file. Now black can show another typical idea which he has at his disposal. This idea was recently displayed by Peter Leko in his match against Gurevich. He played c4 in a similar position. And because the break through e4 is made very difficult, the bishops are very passive, it seems that white has little to show against black's expansion with b5, a5, b4, and despite the fact that there are no queens on the board, black gets some serious attack on the queen side. Now you also see the fact that there are no queens on the board does not necessarily mean that the king cannot be targeted. He, in fact, the pawn attack has all the chances to be successful. So this my opponent wanted to avoid. Play d takes c5, knight c5, king b1. So here we can already take some stock of what happened. Black is marvelously developed. He's controlling many squares. White's bishops are still passive, and basically now black has to think about the ways of increasing his advantage and bring it home. And he in fact has a very nice way to keep white's possibilities in check. I would like you to take a close look at this position, maybe try for 5 minutes or so to find a solution yourself. It is not very difficult but pretty elegant, and I will show you the rest of the game in the next lesson. So we return to my game against Golod from Mainz 2006. I hope you had a good look at this position and found the solution. It is in fact not very difficult and very natural in a way, but for realizing how strong the move is, it is important to understand the aspects of the position. And here the main thing is to prevent the activity of white's bishops. The bishops are at the moment badly placed on f2 and f1, basically not only not being active but also disconnecting white's rooks, and this might change if white is allowed to make some knight d4, bishop c4, and slowly prepare e4, and then the bishops would be strong and white would be better. And in order to avoid this, it is interesting to see that in fact white's major trouble is that his knight is on e2, and the knight being on e2 basically causes a certain lack of harmony in white's position, and if it were to stay there on e2, then black would be doing fine. And after the move rook d8, this match is achieved, because now the knight moving from d4 will allow knight c3 check. For instance, knight f4. As an example, knight c3 check, winning the rook. And if white would play knight d4, then he would be losing after e5, with the same idea. Basically, after knight takes f5, knight c3 check seems to be working. B takes c3, rook d1. It is just important to see that after king c2, threatening knight e7, threatening king d1, and threatening bishop c4, black just calmly retreats his rook to d7 and basically is exchanged up for nothing and is winning the game. And so after rook fd8, in fact very early in the game, we have early endgame, which has arisen immediately after the opening. You see that the activity of forces, centralizing, development, and so on is very important in endgame as well, and this I would like you to remember once and for all. because now black has naturally developed his pieces, and white has not. And in fact, this will never change, because now the black pressure is quite as unbearable, so white doesn't find it possible to move anything at all. In fact, his next move is very illustrative. He plays rook g1, certainly just because he doesn't have any other sensible moves. At the same time, he maybe tries to prepare g4 at some point, and it was possible to ignore this. It was possible to make a move like king f8 and suggest that white weakens himself with g4. But on the other hand, I thought the position was already ripe for action, and bearing in mind that the best way to realize advantage is always to move forward, I played e5. Now this move also takes control of the square d4, so that now knight d4 definitely becomes impossible. Also threatens move like e4, knight d3, and still white has to find a move. And if he goes, let's say, g4 here, after the symbol f takes g4, rook takes g4. Now black can already win material in many different ways. For instance, by playing knight f6. The rook is hanging, and after rook d8, now you see rook d1 is a threat, f3 is hanging, and basically white's position is collapsing. So the advantage in development is beginning to show. So after e5, my opponent decided to play knight c1, using this chance to untangle a bit. But in fact, the complications, slight complications he caused by this move are to black's advantage. I played knight c3, b takes c3, rook d1, bishop c4 check. This was the idea. Now I play bishop d5. And now, because after bishop d5, rook d5, black is clear exchange up, white is forced to play rook d1 and bishop c4. And now I would like you to take a close look at this position. The thing is that here, despite the opposite colored bishops, black has a bishop on c4 and white has a bishop on f2. Black is very seriously better. In fact, I believe he's close to winning. It will be important to see exactly why. And this is what we're doing here. We're trying to see, to learn the strategical aspects of the game, to learn the small details which make such an evaluation possible. So here, the pawn structure is very important. White has pawns a3 and c3, and they will be forever weak, and black will be able to put pressure on c3 immediately with knight a4 and the rook on c8. Black has more space in the center, and white's pawns in the center are not very mobile. And white's bishop on f2 is passive. What is also very important is that the white's rook on d1 doesn't have anything to do on the d file, because the square d7 is taken, and otherwise there are no targets. And black has no weaknesses. Also importantly, knight on c1 is passive, cannot go to b3, d3 or e2, and on a2 after possible a5, it doesn't have much future either. So you see, basically, endgame, very few pieces left, and opposite colored bishops, equal material, but on the other hand, the strategical advantages of black are so great that I believe his advantage to be almost decisive here, if not decisive. And you will see that with what apparent ease, black converts his advantage. And bearing in fact that it was a rapid game, I am especially happy to have been able to achieve this kind of position, and also to be able to realize my advantage so efficiently as I did in this game. So he plays bishop g3. He tries to force me to play e4. And after e4, he may get some squares for his bishop. Bishop d6 or bishop e5 becomes a possibility. But on the other hand, I don't have to do this. I play rook e8. And now my plan is expansion. basically having advantage, it is always good to move forward, to get new squares, provoke new weaknesses, and I want to go g5 and f4 basically. He plays h4, but this doesn't stop. I play g5, hg5, hg5, king c2, king f7, simply activating. And you see now white tries one active move, but in fact I go bishop f1, and you see also g2 and f3 prove to be vulnerable, and he's forced to go back, rook d2. And in this position, all white's pieces are a bit paralyzed. He has no active moves at his disposal. But still, I have to decide how to go forward. I could go f4 certainly, but then after takes bishop f2, white would get some sort of activity, although maybe not enough. But I wanted to keep my opponent completely paralyzed, and I played e4, basically with an idea of playing bishop d3 to keep the rook on d2 once and for all. And also because e3 pawn is hanging, he tried f4. I go bishop d3 check, king b2 and g4. And now you see that white was completely closed. His bishop on g3 remained passive. His rook on d2, knight on c1, basically nothing is moving. And despite the material balance, the black's advantage is only improving, is only increasing, getting bigger and bigger, and basically now there is nothing white can do about it. Also, you see how easy it is to play chess if you are acquainted with the basic positional concepts, with basic strategies, as in this case. So after bishop h4, now the bishop is seemingly active, but he has nothing to attack on this diagonal, and after rook c8, in fact, knight a4 is threatened, c3 is hanging. White plays knight a2, and black continues in the same vein, just trying to strangle any chances, any possibilities, plays a5, not giving access to the square b4, and white has no moves here at all. Plays g3, knight a4 check, and you see now it's time for some action, king a1, b5. So I'm just going forward, not even bothering to take pawns like on c3, because it would exchange some pieces, and my pieces are so much stronger here that I want to keep them if possible. So white still tried rook h2, bishop c4, and basically now I'm starting to pick up his pawns, and all his pieces are just standing there, not really being able to influence the game very much. So you see what began as an unclear endgame, because of the better strategy immediately after the endgame appeared, in fact turned into a decisive advantage, and this even happened in such a way that you cannot point out to any grave mistakes done by white, just some inaccurate play in an early endgame, and allowing these weaknesses prove decisive in the end. So still followed the rook d2, king e6, and after some moves I started to pick up all the pawns, and in fact the resistance was still there, but I just took the pawns and queened my own passed pawns, and in this hopeless position white resigned. So returning a bit to the beginning of the game, so early in the opening black realized what white's strategy was, but also what was the main drawback of his position is that he hasn't yet advanced his pawns, not yet activated his bishops, and after this, with a constant strategy, black managed to stop the activity of white's bishops once and for all. And you saw that from this moment on till the end of the game, white did not manage to create any active ideas, and that by constantly using his pieces to check the activity of white in center, black managed to increase his advantage and win the game. I hope you enjoyed this game. I myself, I was quite proud of this achievement in the rapid game. I hope you also found it instructive, and we will proceed with some other endgame examples in order to improve your chess understanding in endgames.